Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam, and I'm delighted you're sharing this Shabbat service with me. A chance for us to pause, to catch our breath, to think about where we are going and where we've been, because we are living in challenging times. So put away the pencil and the paper, put away the notebook and the keys, set aside the shovel and hammer, rest. For this interval, no buying, no selling, no working, no laboring, no straining, not living in the past, not planning for the future. This is a time for celebration, for joy, for mirth. We are here alive to rejoice in another Sabbath, another opportunity to be together, grateful for our family and our friends. With no distractions, we touch and are touched, the great gift of the Sabbath. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam. That's our bricks and mortar congregation in Loveland, Ohio, and our Jewish community, our online community. We've been streaming services for over 10 years. We began because we recognized there was a need. People were looking for a different voice in Judaism, a voice that we provided. And today, with the pandemic, streaming services have become ever more important. It allows us to connect with one another, to know we're part of something larger than ourselves, that even though we're socially distancing and staying sheltered in homes, we know that we are connected and that we are part of a community. So many people were watching on the high holidays across the country. Servers crashed. It speaks to a real need. But it's more than just the technology that's important. Here at Congregation Beth Adam, we give voice to a bold, dynamic Judaism, a Judaism that recognizes that while we can appreciate our ancestors, their Judaism spoke to who they were. We need a Judaism that is fresh and speaks to who we are today, that is relevant to the lives that we are leading, that is informed by science and history, that recognizes that we are living at a very different time. We need to give voice to that. And that is what we have been doing here at Congregation Beth Adam for 40 years. So I'm delighted you're sharing this Shabbat service with me and with one another. You can chat. You can chat on our website. You can chat on our 2 Facebook pages. But if you do, please be welcoming and inclusive. Let us know where you're participating from. And while you may not be watching at 6 o'clock Eastern time and watching in our archives, as many, many people do, you're part of our community. So I'm delighted you're here. And we continue our service with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. On this Sabbath, we create our moment in time. We pause, reflect upon our yesterdays and tomorrows, to renew our ties with family and friends, to restore our energies, to refresh our spirits. As the sun descends and shadows lengthen, the direction of the day gives way to the stillness of night. It is time for us now to see not with our eyes, but with our hearts and minds. As the day gives way to evening, it is time for us to welcome the Sabbath. The candles stand before us, waiting to be lit. We recall our ancestors as we too seek to dispel the darkness and banish the cold, to bring glowing softness, warmth, and safety into our homes. May the dancing flames of these candles kindle warmth within our hearts, wisdom in our minds, passion in our souls. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or b'Shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. I am having more problems with these matches. So let me try that. That one broke. This one did strike and did light. Good. Not quite sure what it is. If anyone has suggestions about different matches I should use, let me know. So tonight begins Sukkot, the festival of the ingathering. Some of you may have memories of Sukkot or know about Sukkot, a particular holiday, and people build small booths called Sukkahs. I invited Rabbi Rami Shapiro, a friend of mine and a friend of ours who we've spoken to several times, to talk about his thoughts and insight about this particular holiday with us tonight. So I'm so pleased that Rabbi Rami Shapiro is joining us once more. I asked him to join us tonight to discuss the holiday of Sukkot, a holiday that he is deeply passionate about, a holiday that speaks to him. And I want to talk to him about what does it mean to be observing Sukkot this year at a time when we're living in this age of pandemic, when we are keeping our social distance, and many of us aren't even really leaving our homes. So I want to welcome you, Rabbi Shapiro, and first ask how you and your family are doing before we really get into the meat of our conversation. Everyone's healthy and safe?
Yeah, everybody is doing the best they can with what we've got going on. So yeah, everybody's fine.
Wonderful. And you had good high holidays, and
high holidays for me, compared to, I love Sukkot. I tolerate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
It's interesting. So we're introverted in that way.
Yeah. I just don't, they're meaningful, on a scale of 1 to 10, they're a 7, but Sukkot is a 10 for me.
So first, can you remind us what Sukkot is? It starts tonight, this Friday night.
So I can give you here, there's 3 ways of understanding Sukkot. Only one of them is right.
I bet you that's the one
I bet it is. So, traditionally, Sukkot is supposed to be a commemoration of the Jewish people's wandering in the desert. And every night when they set up camp, they somehow could build these sukkahs. They found wood in the desert and they found palm fronds, and they could build these sukkahs and they would live in the sukkah.
And that would be like a booth, a sukkah for those.
A booth. Yeah, right. That's what the word means. That is what you and I were taught in seminary. And it's stupid. That's not, we know how people live in the desert. They have sheep, they have wool, they have, tents, right? Made out of the wool. So no, they didn't build booths and live in the booth. So that's out of the question. The second thing, which is more likely, is that Sukkot is a harvest holiday. It's the autumn harvest. And when you're out in the fields bringing in the harvest, they would construct fragile temporary booths so that the workers could have a place to sleep and then just, continue the harvest the next day. That's probably where the custom of building booths came from. But I'm not a farmer. No, it's just that alone doesn't speak to me. You could say it's sort of Jewish Thanksgiving, and that's not a bad thing, but that doesn't speak to me. The mystical understanding of Sukkot is all about learning how to live effectively in or with impermanence and insecurity and uncertainty. That's what the Sukkah is. The Sukkah is the anti-story to the 3 little pigs. Remember the 3 little pigs?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about.
I had to figure where's he going with that. But that one built his house out of straw, and one built his house out of twigs, and one built his house out of bricks. Right. But the big bad wolf could knock down the straw house and the twig house, but you could build a house out of bricks and you would survive. Sukkot says, there's no such thing as a brick house. There's no such thing as surviving the madness of life and celebrating Sukkot in a time of pandemic. And not just the COVID pandemic, but the pandemic, and we don't have to go into this, but the global pandemic of the end of liberalism and democracy. Right. This is the time when you have to say, whoa, everything I thought was permanent politically, economically, philosophically, and health-wise is just not so. So you get together, you once a year for a week, you're supposed to build one of these booths and live in it as a way of embodying the fact that you live in a time of impermanence. Now, I'm not suggesting people go out and build booths. That's not the primary focus of my celebration of the holiday. There are some traditions around the holiday that speak to this. Let me just run through them really quick. So the sukkah, the booth itself, represents the inability of humanity to avoid, to escape the horrors of life. What the Chinese call the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. You get them all. Then you have the lulav and the etrog. So we won't go into the details of that, but the lulav is a palm frond.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. It's a big palm frond with myrtle and
willow.
willow, thank you very much, attached to it. And then the citron is the etrog, and you put them together and you shake them in all the 4 directions, up and down, as a way. It's a primitive, and I like this about it. It's a primitive tribal celebration of Earth's fecundity. You can have all this bounty in the midst of all this fragility. Right. I like that. I like the exercise. I think it's fun. From the Kabbalistic point of view, the palm frond, and this maybe gets a little X-rated here, but the palm frond represents masculine energy.
Sure.
And the citron represents feminine energy. And so what you're supposed to do when you bring them together is to remember that you have, whether you're a man or a woman or trans or however you present yourself, whatever your presentation of self is, you contain these opposites. You contain these complementaries. So it's like yin and yang kind of thing. So it's a good reminder that I'm not just one or the other. And maybe I'm too much one or the other. I need to find balance. So I like the challenge of balance. Two more things. One is, it's called ushpizin, which is to invite the ancestors into your sukkah, right? Into your home. So traditionally, it's Abraham and then, Isaac and Jacob and those guys. And then because we get liberal, so now it's Abraham and Sarah, and so that doesn't speak to me at all. I mean, I'm not going to invite Abraham into my house. He's sort of a homicidal guy, and I don't know who he wants to hang out with.
Better make sure he takes his knife away, put his knife.
Yeah, right. Let's just keep that away. Exactly. So I use the time to invite a different mystic into my consciousness every day by reading the great mystics, not just Jewish ones. I mean, whoever speaks to you. So I spend time studying a little bit every day during Sukkot, one or another of the great mystics from the world's spiritual traditions. But what I love most about Sukkot is the tradition is to study the book of Ecclesiastes.
Which is your book.
That's right. It's my favorite book of the Bible. It works for me in 2 ways. One, I love the book. 2, I have 2 translations on the book. So I make money during Sukkot if people go out and they buy my translation.
So this is a promotion for Rabbi Rami Shapiro. What are the titles of your 2 translations?
I'll give you one. It's easy to remember. Ecclesiastes, Annotated and Explained, which you can get at your local bookstore or Amazon.
So how can there be 2 translations of the same book? Shouldn't if you did it accurately the first time, only be one interpretation, one translation?
Right, except we're Jewish. So, right?
Oh, right.
So 2 Jews, 3 opinions, 1 Jew, 2 translations. The big difference between the 2 books is one has line-by-line commentary and the other doesn't. 2 different companies asked for 2 different ways of getting into the book. But I love Ecclesiastes. So why? Opening line of Ecclesiastes, the opening teaching of Ecclesiastes is Hevel Havalim Hakol Hevel, which means in most English Bibles, vanity of vanities, everything is vanity. I mean, I don't know who translates these things. That's so ridiculous. Meaninglessness upon meaninglessness. I mean, if you get a book and the opening says everything is meaningless, just close the book, right? I'm not going to read that.
I bet you yours doesn't translate it that way. Then.
No, it does not. You guessed correctly. No, the word Hevel actually comes from the idea of morning dew. So like you get up in the morning and the grass is wet with dew, and by noon it's all gone. It's all dried up, evaporated. It's about impermanence. Nothing lasts. So the opening line or the opening teaching of the book is impermanence upon impermanence. Everything is impermanent. Once you understand that's where he's starting from, and it's true to the Hebrew. And so that's what I think. I'm reading into his mind, but that's what I think he was talking about. Once you understand that it's all about impermanence, the rest of the book is a pretty radical way to live without control, to live without permanence, to live without certainty or surety. You never know what's going to happen next. So how do you live? And his answer is pretty straightforward. He says, eat moderately, drink moderately, dress nicely with clean clothes, keep your hair clean, and he says, find work that brings you joy. And then, and this is again, maybe a little X-rated, but he says, cultivate 2 or 3 friends. Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at it in the text, he talks about keeping your friends keep you warm at night. So these might be friends with benefits. Mm-hmm. I don't know, right. But and it's 2 or 3 of them.
So in the book of Ecclesiastes, so how does it get into the Bible? It doesn't sound as what we would think as a traditional Jewish text. It gets into the theology that had been being promoted by the people who codified the Bible. How did it slip in there?
Yeah, this Ecclesiastes, like Song of Songs, which is just an erotic love poem, right, get into the Bible because tradition says King Solomon wrote these books. Right. And who's going to keep King Solomon out of the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. So Solomon wrote Proverbs. Solomon wrote, what we're taught is when he was young, he wrote erotic poetry, Song of Songs. Middle age, he wrote Proverbs. Old age, he wrote Ecclesiastes. So it gets in for that. But somebody, I don't know who, but somebody at some point in our history added a closing sentence, a closing verse mm-hmm. at the end of the book. So you go through this whole thing. The book never talks about God. The references to God, there are 1 or 2, he references God the same way Spinoza does. When Spinoza says, Deus sive natura, God or nature. So he talks about Elohim as just nature, basically. So it's not a supernatural book. There's no saving grace here. It's completely humanistic. Right. And that would drive the traditional, powers that be nuts. Mm-hmm. So somebody wrote this last line. In the end, when all is said and done, fear God and live the commandments.
It's sort of like Descartes, when Descartes in the prologue to First Meditation, he gives a nod to the church. And it's there, I remember, and one could argue, the entire book has nothing to do with religion, but he put that in because he knew if he didn't, it was never going to get published.
Right. Now, right. In this case, I don't think Ecclesiastes wrote, or King Solomon, whoever actually wrote it, wasn't Solomon. I don't think that person wrote that line. I think an editor added it so that at the end they felt more comfortable with the book.
Is my memory correct that it was also in dialogue with some Greek philosophy? That there was.
Yeah, this is all 2nd century, not commentary on, but yeah, in dialogue with, the way you put it, in dialogue with Greek philosophy, Hellenistic Jews. There's a whole other Judaism from Athens that was really in competition with the Judaism of Jerusalem, I think. Mm-hmm.
So today, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
So when you celebrate Sukkot, your practices are more sort of personal practice, study of mystics during the course. Maybe do you do an invitation? There are people who love the idea of inviting people into a sukkah. This year, that's going to be very hard, though it's outside. Right. I suppose it's one of the safe ways they have a dinner this.
Yeah, you could. I don't, because I'm at this point, without going into things, we're in a very high risk.
Right.
COVID bracket, mm-hmm. Not me personally, but so we're not, my kids will come over and my grandson will come over, but.
With your grandson, do you have a lulav and an etrog, or?
Yeah, we have a lulav and an etrog. You got to be very careful. When he's 4.5.
Oh, they're very sharp.
They're very sharp. So I have a stuffed one, like the little baby ones. Okay. So I've got that, but he's too smart for that. He wants the other one. But you can slice your fingers.
No. I've hurt myself more than once. So that's interesting. And one of the challenges, I think, for lots of certainly modern Jews who are not bound by halakha, not bound by the rules, not feeling we have to do things, to have the Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot, and then Simchat Torah, with all these holidays that are packed into this very, very small period of time, it becomes actually overwhelming in many ways. How to do all of them effectively?
Yeah, don't. I don't think you can, really. I imagine that they were all squished into this period because it was hard to get people to, come to Jerusalem and then come back a week later. No one's going to do that. So you give them something to do for all the holidays in a lump. But, if I had to choose, I would choose Sukkot and skip Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Simchas Torah, which comes at the end, right after, right after Sukkot, then there's Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of assembly, and then Sukkot. I'm sorry, then Simchat Torah, rejoicing in Torah. In my mind, when I had a synagogue, which was a long time ago, so you go through Sukkot, and then there's a big celebration, which is a celebration of living with impermanence. Right. You can't build something that will keep you safe. But on the 8th day, when you bring the community together, you're saying, look, I can't protect myself from the contingencies of life. But if we're coming together, if we can be a community, if we can reach out and help one another, we can help one another get through the contingencies of life. So it celebrates not a building, not an institution, but a community as a way of surviving the madness of everyday life. And then it ends with Simchas Torah, rejoicing in the Torah. So yeah, some parts of the Torah I like. Most of the Torah I go, are you joking? Really? Can I just pass this on? Pass over these passages? But I don't read it that way. I think Torah should be understood as the entire creative canon of Jewish literary output, and that you're really celebrating Jewish literacy. And if you don't want to read from the 5 books of Moses, for High Holy Days this year, on Rosh Hashanah, we read mystical tales from Reb Nachman of Braslav in the 18th century. And then on Yom Kippur, our Torah text was a parable from Franz Kafka, because those were more meaningful to the people that were with me.
And you did a very different kind of, you're no longer sort of a congregation, so you're creating your own, a very different kind of.
Yeah, I just put out a personal thing you could download and go through it as a contemplative practice, and then join me on Zoom. We discuss these parables. So I would, again, if I were going to do this with a community, if I had a community with which to do it, I would celebrate on Simchas Torah. Okay, we just spent a week studying Ecclesiastes. How cool was that? Now let's take a look at something from the modern Jewish canon. I mean, it could be Kafka, it could be Amos Oz, it could be Cynthia Ozick. I mean, there's a lot. Jews when it comes to words, Jews are brilliant. Right.
And unfortunately, we limit it too often. I mean, and we need to say that your approach that you're doing, most rabbis aren't taking your approach to the.
No, is that true?
You thought you were leading the pack.
I thought I was in the middle of the pack. I had no idea that I was a pack of one.
That's important to say, because I think unfortunately what's happened is so often we have these narrow interpretations of these holidays, and it's oftentimes about the rules of the holidays and making sure you do them correctly, and the creativity and sort of the expansive way of reinterpreting them and seeing sort of ideas that resonate with the lives we're living, oftentimes isn't being expressed at all, and that you're bringing a lot of that.
I think you have to go back to, and of course it's my interpretation, but people should go back and figure out what was the point of this, and not get hung up on the rules that evolved over centuries.
And I think it's important to say too, and I was just teaching a class, and I think what you're doing reminds me of this, is Jewish holidays have always evolved. That's the simple, that is the constant within Judaism, change. And the reality is, if we have the same right to keep on changing the holiday, and that's authentically Jewish, to make it meaningful for the age we're living in, because most of us are living in urban environments. We're no longer going out to harvest our crops. And, a lot of rabbis will say, well, it reminds us that somebody else is doing it for us. But there's more, at some point that works for kids, but that's not an in-depth, meaningful conversation.
That's right. That's right. I mean, if it's not evolving, it's not living. And then what am I doing? I'm just imitating some stuff that long dead people did.
Right.
And I don't want to do that.
Right. And the idea, I think, the idea that they did sympathetic magic, the idea of waving the lulav and the etrog around for fertility in an age when we are facing global climate change, and that it's radically altering our planet, a serious conversation about how does our climate exist and how do we maintain it is more important to talk about, that we need to deal with the issue of fossil fuels, and rather than pretending that by waving these symbols around, our earth is going to be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if you're willing to deal with the philosophical principles at the heart of these things and then apply them to the contemporary issues, then the holidays are immense, or have the potential to be immensely creative, to be a catalyst for all kinds of great, not just discussion, but even action. So I'm not suggesting that you take a gas pump and you wave it around instead of a lulav, but it's the perfect time to say, okay, we need to eat. We need to eat what can be grown on the earth. We're killing the earth and making it. Do we need to eat what we're eating? You know, and you could look at meat eating. You could look at all kinds of things that are just no longer appropriate to our time in the earth's condition.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, sharing your insights. I would encourage people to find your translations of Ecclesiastes and other works that you've written. You know, you joined us before, and each time you do, you bring new insights to the conversation. So we really appreciate it. Have a wonderful Sukkot holiday. I hope your studies go well, and I look forward to you joining us again in the future.
Always, Rabbi Barr, thank you very much.
Thank you. So I hope you take away something from the conversation that Rabbi Shapiro and I had about Sukkot. Perhaps you'll reread or read for the first time the book of Ecclesiastes, now informed by the insights that Rabbi Shapiro shared with us. Perhaps you'll go outside and walk among nature and think about the issue of impermanence, and think about the importance of nature in our lives and how we have a responsibility to maintain the planet on which we live. So we're going to continue our service now with the sharing of the virtual challah, an affirmation that though we're separated by distance, we are still part of a community. As the fingers of the challah intertwine, so do we join hands in our common humanity, sharing the fruits of our labors. We cherish that which has been created through human effort, for it is through the work of our hands, the strength of the human spirit, the vision of our minds, that our dreams are woven into the tapestry of time. We celebrate the accomplishments of yesterday and today, anticipating the possibilities of tomorrow. May the sharing of the challah strengthen our bond with others who walk upon this earth. Baruch Hamal Kapenu, blessed is the work of our hands. Baruch Hazon Ha'adam, blessed is the vision of our minds. Baruch Lechem Ha'aretz, blessed is the bread of the earth. And then if you have some juice or wine, join with me. We celebrate the fruit of the vine and the bounty of nature as we lift the cup. For we are part of nature, which gave us birth and continues to sustain us. Even as we depend upon nature, so do we influence its course. Through the search for understanding, we have gained the knowledge to shape our world. Guided by the best of human wisdom and the compassion of our spirit, we accept the responsibility which rests upon us. May the taste of the juice upon our lips stir within us a reverence for nature and a respect for human endeavor. Bruchim chachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim chachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. And we say, l'chaim, the life. So before we conclude, a few quick announcements. Next week is our memorial. As you know, if you've been participating, once a month, we read the names of deceased loved ones. If you are not a member of our bricks and mortar community, you'll need to send those to me at rabbi@bethadam.org. rabbi@bethadam.org. If you put in the subject line memorial names, that would be very helpful. If you can send them to me by Wednesday, that's important as well. In order to prepare these services, I need the materials by then. So that's our memorial. So we'll be reading both the names of our OJC deceased loved ones, as well as our bricks and mortar, the members, the yortzites of members of Congregation Beth Adam that are part of our database. Also, on Wednesday, October 7th, which is this Wednesday that's coming up, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Rabbi Burstein and myself will be discussing the liturgy of Congregation Beth Adam. We had a lot of visitors during the high holidays, and we thought it important to have an opportunity to talk about why the liturgy of our congregation is different than the liturgy that you'll find almost anywhere else in the world. How did it come to be? Why does it exist? How does it reflect our values and our philosophy? So again, you can join us at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for that conversation. In order to do that, you will need a Zoom link. This will be an interactive conversation. It's not going to be like a streaming activity like we're doing right now. It'll be interactive. So if you'd like a Zoom link, you need to write me at rabbi@bethadam.org, put into it Zoom link for the liturgy conversation. Well, that's a long title. Why don't you just put Zoom link, please? That'll help me catch that. So you can always go to bethadam.org. That's our website for information about upcoming events. You can listen to my podcast there, so you have different educational materials that we've put there as well. So I'm delighted that we were able to share this Shabbat together. And we close with the words that we close with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we need blessings those who are far. And may the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. Shabbat Shalom.